Best Breakfast with Stephen Senatiempo on 2CC.
A partly cloudy day across the region, heading towards tops of 18 degrees, currently sitting at 9.8 degrees, feels like 7.4, but we'll get there later this morning. Looking pretty sunny out there, though. I mean, the Bureau's telling us partly cloudy, but you know what that's like. Talking to us every Tuesday is One Nation leader, Senator Pauline Hanson. Good morning, Pauline.
Good morning, Stephen.
A couple of things I want to touch on with you, and I just spoke to Christy McSweeney about this. There's a new parliamentary watchdog, an unelected body that's going to tell you guys how to do your job.
It's a joke, isn't it? Really, how are they going to tell us how to do our jobs? I'm not for it. I think it's just ridiculous what's going to happen here, and I'd like to know how it's going to happen and what they intend to do. Keep an eye on us. What?
Yeah, well, and that's right. Look, I think the behaviour in Parliament House does need to improve, particularly during question time. I mean, and I spoke to Milton Dick about this last week, the fact that he actually had to admit in Parliament that he couldn't compel the Prime Minister to actually answer the question he was being asked. So, I mean, a bit of tightening up of the rules might help, but...
how is that going to... Okay, you put up a watchdog. How are they going to impact until the Prime Minister answers the question or anyone?
Well, they're not. That's right. Yeah.
They sidestep it. So what? It's another bureaucracy that's set up to do what? And they talk about the behaviour of politicians. Yes, people get sick and tired of watching question time. I hear it all the time. That's why I don't go down to it unless I'm asking a question. It's pointless. Being in there, it's all Dorothy Dick's questions that are set up. And then, you ask a question, you can't get a straight answer out of them. It's pathetic. Yeah. Until we get decent members of Parliament in there that are prepared to all know their job and not just tokenism that's handed out like lollipops, I get fed up with it myself.
You've been very vocal about this next topic for quite some time now, but you're calling for much stronger accountability, transparency and governance standards for Indigenous corporations, which have dominated government grants for the current financial year. Look, there really does need to be something done here because there's none of, and you and I have discussed this before, nobody disagrees that we need to improve the plight of disadvantaged Indigenous people in remote and rural areas, and, well, all Australians for that matter. But so much money is being sucked into a black hole and not getting to where it needs to go.
Correct, Stephen. And what I found out is that in this year alone, now there's funding, and it's somewhere between $35 to $40 billion a year is given out to the Aboriginal industry, okay? That's to help Aboriginals. Now, mind you, the last census, Aboriginals were about 820,000 people who identified as Aboriginal, but they have availability to all other services like every other Australian, but this is an extra on top of it. Now, apart from that, from the 1st of July this year, only 2 months ago, in 2 months, they've given out $1.6 billion extra in grants.
Wow.
Last year, it was over $11 billion. Prior to that, the coalition was about $2 billion extra in grants. What they're doing is, the money is just flowing out the door. They talked about the educational levels. They're going to put another $700 million towards the education of kids up in the Northern Territory. For what? They don't go to school. They don't turn up at school. And what are you going to do? Do you pay the parents more money to send the kids to school? The whole problem is we don't treat them the same as every other child and go and enforce why your kids aren't in school. Until these kids get an education and made to go to school like every other child, you're not going to change the whole system. The housing, another $4 billion on top of it for housing up in the Northern Territory for only, a couple hundred people. And the rest of Australians are actually going without housing. It's a joke. It is absolute joke.
And it's an important point that, Senator Jacinta Price and Warren Mundine and people like that always say that we need to treat all Australians the same, and that's the way to end the disadvantage, is to treat everybody the same way. But I wanted to touch on one other thing. You'd be aware of this gold mine in Blaney that's been knocked back. Now turns out the proponent or the person that put the objection in isn't even from the Aboriginal group that inhabits that area, and the locals are actually okay with it.
Correct. And that was going to create about 800 jobs, bring a lot of money into the resource industry to the state as well. And you have one minister, one person, after it passed the environmental requirements, after it went through, all the red and green tape that needs to go through, plus the Aboriginal group agreed with it. So one minister. So what does that tell you? Our system stinks. that if one minister can overrule this when it's passed the laws, because these laws are set down that they must pass these requirements, which is passed the requirements, therefore her ruling on this should not happen.
Yeah,
particularly should be allowed to go ahead.
Particularly when it's a minister that's trying to shore up her own seat in inner Sydney. Pauline, good to talk to you. We'll catch up again next week.
Right. Thanks, Stephen. Bye.
Senator Pauline Hanson back with us next.